We will call to order at 6:15 the meeting for the Board of Health for Chelmsford, Massachusetts, January 2011. And I think our first issue is to look over the minutes for December meeting.
Yeah.
And once people are ready, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from December.
And I'll
do I hear-
second that. I'll second
Okay,
it.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. I'm gonna put the hearing aside until 6:30.
Donna, what's this fancy paper?
What fancy paper?
My paper's got lines on the bottom of it.
Oh,
Oh, the copier.
Oh. I thought it was like you were giving us a little pizzazz.
I wish.
that's Donna's idea of a good time.
Yeah.
Why do I have 3 copies of the Mahoney's Garden Center? Are these all the same or are they?
No, different
Different
location.
dates. They're different dates, Eric.
Okay, is there any problem with that?
No. They were probably finding more locations as they went along.
Right. Yeah, they basically are doing 3 different sites on the overall site. So I guess they went from one and then found it the other and then found the other. So
So what are they doing up there, Richard?
it's just asbestos. I mean, the old greenhouses and the old heating system that they had is old enough that it, a lot of the components of it, were aligned with asbestos because that's what they did. So they were finding it in a lot of different materials from the 50s, I guess you want to call it that, kind of thing. So it was just that they went and found one and they checked for more and checked for more and checked for more. So, but I guess they're moving along and, should be okay.
Okay.
Should be okay. And of course, they're not mobbed or anything. So therefore, this is a good as time as any to get it done. And when the greenhouse business isn't,
Yeah, a
rolling
little
along.
slow.
Yeah, kind of thing. The
urgent legal matter. Town of Chelmsford.
that was 54
Public
Richardson
Works?
Road. Is that what you're talking about?
54 Richardson Road, yes.
Yeah, that was the one that was brought up last time where they that PFAS piece, however you
Yeah, okay,
Pronounced it.
okay,
kind of thing in there. It's a follow up on that.
okay.
Or actually, I think it's something else to do with it. Yeah, with the site. So
Sue, was there a spill or?
This was a threat or
Yeah.
release of oil,
yeah, it was an oil thing. Yeah.
oil,
A
an
spill
oil,
or a threat of spill?
a spill.
Okay,
So they're just responsible to submit a plan to clean it up.
okay, so they plan to keep cleaning up. There's nothing that went into the water supply.
Right.
I'll make a motion to accept the incoming correspondence.
Do
I'll
I hear a
second.
second?
Yes,
All in
second.
favor, all in
Aye.
favor, say aye. Aye,
Aye.
unanimous. So that was the incoming, I believe.
Yes.
Correspondence. Next is the outgoing correspondence, and we have about 9 minutes until the
Okay.
hearing.
So go slow, is that what you're saying, Eric?
Yeah, right. I'm sure our problem is trying to fill the time, trying to fill Mr. Paul's time.
So we got a couple of accessory building
Mhm.
requests. That's nice.
Yep.
Keeping the old folks at home.
Are you saying we're old?
No. You're only as old as you feel.
That's right. There it is. There it is.
Kind of the benchmark, the number there keeps being pushed farther and farther and farther back.
All right. Those look good.
Okay.
Richard, I hate to open a can of worms here, but when I talk about these accessory apartments, which I'm fully in favor of, what does this do about our sewer capacity?
I thought that was built in for
is built
existing
in.
residential structures.
Yeah. It's supposed
So
to
we
be.
don't have to worry about that.
No.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion to accept?
I make a motion to accept.
A second?
I'll make a motion to second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So as to old business. Did you want to do any COVID-19 updates, Miss Sue?
So basically, unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull all the numbers for today, just because it's just been incredibly busy. But we do post them on our website every single Thursday. They're updated every Wednesday on our website. So anybody that wants to look at those numbers, they can. We are still, like every other community around us, we're still in the red because we're having extreme numbers every single day of cases testing positive. We're seeing pretty much generalized community spread. We're getting anywhere from 15 to 25 new cases every single day.
Wow.
And we're trying to keep up with that. This week, we are, and that's why I was a little bit late and I apologize, but Chelmsford has been the lead community in planning and collaborating regional COVID-19 vaccine clinics for our police and fire for this region. And that involves the six out of the 7 towns that we've been collaborating with in our coalition for the past many, many years. And that includes, it'll be Chelmsford, Westford, Billerica, Dracut, Tewksbury, and Kingsborough. And it was a matter of, registering with the state, signing up with the state. There's all kinds of very specific documents that have to be signed. There's very specific storage and handling on the vaccine. And there's also very specific instructions from the state as to who this vaccine can be allocated for. And right now, we are in phase 1. There are many different people listed in phase 1. However, these clinics are specific to police and fire as far as first responders. Everybody has to pre-register for the clinic. You cannot just show up the day of the clinic. You're pre-registered. We are checking ID to make sure that you are in fact employed by the town that is part of this coalition. And then once we get through this phase, we're hoping to collaborate with the state to try to be able to move on to other groups within phase 1. One of the things that we will make sure that we adhere to during this entire process is the importance of not wasting any vaccine. It's just too important. The vaccine is very fragile. It comes frozen. There's very specific parameters. Once it is defrosted, can only be, has to be used within 6 hours. once it's punctured, can only be at room temperature for 12 hours. If it comes out of the refrigerator, goes out of the freezer into the refrigerator, only good for 30 days as long as it's not punctured. So there's all kinds of real specifics about handling that we have to be very, very strict about. And we have to follow the state guidelines. I can't even begin to tell you the number of phone calls that my office is getting. Our phone is just exploding. We can't possibly keep up with all the calls. Last Friday, we did end up having to put a recording on our phone because everybody is calling us wanting to know when it will be their turn to get the vaccine, or having multiple questions and, when is my group going to come up? And unfortunately, right now, we don't have the answers to that. And the only thing that we can tell people is that once we get the authorization from the Department of Public Health to do further clinics within our community, we will organize them, we'll collaborate, we'll get it as soon as we get the vaccine. People will have to pre-register. We'll advertise on our website. We'll advertise through, the senior center or whatever, our social media, whatever avenues we have. But we just, on this meeting, I will just apologize in advance that we do not have the capacity to answer every single phone call. It's just impossible.
Is
So,
there,
that's
a
why we had
link?
to do the recording.
Can we do a link to the state to put the references, the numbers, or tells when the state approves going to,
There is
this
a
phase,
link,
that
there is
phase?
a link on our website.
Okay.
The state website, and that is updated. The phases of the state website is updated every Tuesday and Friday at 5 p.m. They update, the phases and the priority lists.
And can we reference that so that you don't have to call those people back? Because my questions were about your staffing, with regards to tracking, with regards to registering people being vaccinated, and to the administration. Wondering what kind of support you have there.
As far as answering the phones,
Well, the first one is, so I was hoping to sort of have a statement there that says we will not be able to, go to this, refer them to a website or without having to call each and every person back. Because right now you get the same staff that we don't normally deal with a pandemic. And the first question is, do we have enough people to do appropriate tracking? That, when I do it in the office for my individual patients, it's taking about 20 minutes per patient in
Yeah.
order for them to understand it properly, what they, what isolation, what quarantine and such means. You're having 15 to 20 new patients a day, or 15 to 20 new positives a day. How many
Right.
people do you have doing tracking?
right now, it was Darcy and Amanda. We are just in the, and we had we have one school nurse who's been helping us for quite some time now. We just onboarded a second school nurse who's been in the last couple of weeks working her butt off, helping us out. We've got 2 other people in the wings ready to start. They've taken the training from the state and all that. And the only holdup with getting them started is actually the state, getting them registered for the proper website. This week in particular, a lot more cases are going to get sent to the contact tracing collaborative at the state level, because we are in fact doing these immunization clinics this week, all day Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And in order for these clinics to take place, we need all hands on deck. So we actually having a volunteer in our office just strictly answering the phones. But I think, Donna, better, we can update that message and put that link on there to the state as far as the priority list, correct?
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And I think we'll come back to this, but I think right now it is 6:30 and we have people on if everybody agrees.
That's fine.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, so the highlighted areas, those are the new areas, Sue? Or
Correct.
Donna?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the same regulation that you were given last month. And we had some concerns about the wording, in particular, under D, required provisions. So we do have Paul Haverty with us on this call tonight. And it was suggested, of course, that we update the definition of secondary treatment, because secondary treatment was going to be wording used in the regulation. And then it was felt amongst the board members last month that some of the wording was a bit too restrictive. And, you know, we needed to kind of be careful because we want people to be able to use their property and, you know, future develop their property in such a way that it wouldn't be considered overly restrictive by the state. So this is the updated wording. Paul, if you want to just make a few comments about your thoughts on this wording.
Thank you, Sue. So I did take a look at the proposed changes, and I think that they're fine. I did have concerns previously with the language that would have essentially outright banned the use of septic systems in large portions of the town. But what this does now is simply require secondary treatment for any septic system to be located within those sensitive areas. And I think that's absolutely appropriate.
And this doesn't prevent us from requiring it in, that they tie into the sewers when the sewer has proper capacity.
No, because if you look at D2,
Two,
Mhm.
it says it there.
Okay.
And then the also, and I think the board was in agreement with, we didn't change any of the wording under the variance section. So the fact that this does contain a variance provision, it does allow people in the future, you know, if they come across a situation where they don't feel that they should comply with the provisions under D, that they would have to come before the board and present their case for a possible variance.
Okay, it seems a little quiet. Does anybody have concerns? Or did we hash this out last time? And I know that we're not happy with the idea that there isn't capacity and that this is taking a step back, particularly in sensitive areas, wetlands, aquifers, zone 2, et cetera. But given that there's a moratorium on sewer connections and we can't prevent people from outright building, does this suffice for the interim?
Well, you know, again, I think I was the bigger spokesman about the issue. And, you know, the obvious issue is you're always going to have that gray in the zone 2, you know, kind of thing. Scenarios that exist in town that, you know, through the sewer project, you know, the intent was, because we had so many problems from the past, that we thought we were going down the path of like what I call a final solution for the town, which was that, you know, all wastewater was going to pass down through the sewer system, and therefore groundwater protection, as much as anybody can do with protecting groundwater, was being done by that project. But you run into these hiccups, if you want to call them that. And I think you need to put reasonable stop gaps in holes on certain things that will, as we did in the very beginning. I mean, when this 84 original kind of thing went in that talked about that, it was sort of a stopgap to make sure that things weren't flowing away from the sewer 100% scenario to it. And of course, I think it helped direct it so that everybody was going that direction, and the project was going forward, you know, being full, spreading the sewer throughout the town, and therefore, you know, reaching 99 point whatever percent of the properties in town. I think the town has to sort of take a second look on the fact that you have limitations. Everything has limitations, And whether you're pro-development or not, or whatever you want to call it, the reality is that there has to be some restrictions somewhere. And that, I didn't hear anywhere, from the very beginning when the people in strong numbers basically voted in favor to do this 100% of the town in that last 96 kind of phase that they added to it, that was going to be the end of the issue of, worrying about, groundwater. And, this PFAS thing is just something that's going to pop up every 10, 20 years. They're going to find new ways of testing lower things and lower amounts causing problems and whatever. And the solution, of course, is if you don't put it in the ground, then you don't have to worry about chasing it, kind of thing. At least in that issue, okay, that you're not going to be drinking it. It may get to you some other way, but you've done your job to do it. So, but I think as the next, year or two go by, we're going to have to, I think everything's going to get reevaluated anyways. And this COVID thing is kind of throwing everything up in the air and everything's going to come falling back down. So where things are really going to go and not go, who knows, kind of thing. I think this is a reasonable protective measure for the time. It doesn't restrict us from potentially, and again, I'm not saying we're going to, but potentially tighten some things if we see what's happening and not happening. As I said, I mean, I'm not thrilled in going backwards, but there is the reality that we don't want to spend the rest of our time fighting over in court and everything else over everything that comes down the pike. And I think this scenario overlaps all the different sections of the town and kind of at least cohesively ties it together so that it's
So
better than
ultimately-
most. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I think we're okay with this. Our fear, though, is we don't want this to become a moratorium in perpetuity. That we want to make sure that our concerns, like the PFAS, is that there are more things we're going to have to worry about if we keep dumping anything in the soil,
Right.
and that the town's going to need a long-term solution to try to get everything back 100% on sewer for a variety of reasons.
Right.
Do we have a sense the town is continuing to kind of look at the options and think of increasing sewer capacity one way or the other, or is it too early? Are they still in this sort of exploratory phase on that?
They authorized the study to be done to figure out if there was, any potential for, even, putting some kind of a treatment system within town itself. I'm not 100% sure. I think that study maybe has already started, or at least it's out to bid to figure out who's going to do that. That's the last I know of it, is that it was approved by the select board to actually perform that study to do the capacity. I know that there was outreach made to the Lowell treatment plant to see kind of what was happening there as far as the exact capacity of not just us, but the other communities and where they were looking in particular. I know they were reaching out to them. So it's definitely not something that's, stagnant. They are looking forward. And there are, there are developments. I mean, I think it's important that we still consider about protecting our, wastewater system, because there are developments that are going to continue to come forward, and they're going to continue to come before the planning board for, multi-unit homes, subdivisions, whatever. So
Now, does the vote for 100% sewer, is that still binding?
Well,
I'm not
that's,
sure what you mean.
yeah, I mean, it was binding in the fact that, and I think that's where the other issues have to be looked at is the fact that, we had a plan that basically was going to tell us that we were going to reach 100% of everybody, and everybody that was pre-existing on the maps back at that point in time was going to have a pipe put to their piece of property. The problem has been that we've also had pretty dramatic changes in zoning and changing all the parameters of what we kind of worked from to what's now on the books. And it's kind of frustrating, and I'll say that, it's frustrating to the fact that they take them, and I'm not saying, don't take the word they the wrong way, but the parties are taking themselves off the hook, put a moratorium, but say, oh, by the way, there's a moratorium and we don't want the heat from that. So therefore we'll just pass it over to the Board of Health and let them fight with you over how they might let you put something in the ground. It's a little,
Shocking.
it's a little, no, well, it is. I mean, and so they take no heed.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, hey, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say
The
it.
truth. That's the truth.
I'm the one's
But
green
it's
up on the
frustrating.
board. That I think this is normal, apparently, having everything like chickens and stuff come through the board. But the reason I asked the question is I just want to make sure that in terms of the town, that we are concerned, we don't want there to be a moratorium in perpetuity. And
Correct.
so that, is this a situation where the town took a vote 20 and the town has an obligation to find or do we need to start putting pressure on saying like, look, there are things like the PFAS and such that are coming up that, once you put it in, you can't get it out. And we are going to be responsible for a very, very much more costly cleanup if we don't put a sewage system in place in the meantime. So Paul, what obligations does the town have to find a solution to end the moratorium?
The town doesn't have any obligation to find
Yeah.
a solution to end the moratorium. However, I think they do have an incentive to do so. I mean, I think that the inability to allow connections to the municipal sewer system is having impacts on development in town.
Mhm.
It is certainly having environmental impacts that the town would prefer not to occur if it were otherwise possible to allow them to connect instead. So there's certainly incentive for the town to try to find a solution to the current capacity issue. However, they're not under any obligation to do so. The fact that at one point there was a determination that 100% of the town would be sewered does not mean that they are in perpetuity required to continue to pursue that 100%.
Okay. And
Yeah,
then from our perspective,
but I think the issue is that we have to go back to the backward spot, which is basically is that someone has to be in that position to sit there and say to this constant changing of zoning, which every change basically has increased the capacity of discharge on every piece of property that's been involved. It's never reduced it. It's never been that, oh, you can put this many gallons per acre and now you're forced to put less. It's more per acre kind of thing. So, I mean, there has to be, if the town, and I'm not saying they won't, if the town doesn't proceed in resolving that question that you just brought up, the 100% issue, then the answer is, well, then zoning can't stay the way it is. So zoning can't continue to increase the amount of flow that's going to be generated by the future development of the town over what they already have. And so therefore, some of the things that they've done for good reason.
but I think the problem we run into is that we're not the zoning board.
No, I understand that.
And so that, but we need to sort of make sure that they understand our concerns about,
Yes.
100% sewer, whatever it is that sort of like, causes us to go over our capacity, be it zoning or whatever it is.
Yeah. Right.
Our argument is that, that this moratorium should not be in perpetuity, that there are problems we've had in the past. There are increasing problems that, are going to be tracked in the future, that we need to find a solution at some point, either to make them aware now or just to sort of put it on the agenda for some time after COVID, to write a letter to the town of selectmen, the zoning board, or both, to say that, we have concerns, what are you doing about this?
Yes.
But Eric, I think they're well aware of our position, because if you recall, our recommendation was a hard moratorium.
Yep. No, I know
So
they're gonna,
they know we don't like what they've done,
right.
and.
My fear is that the more time that goes on, the easier it is to sort of forget and just keep the moratorium.
But you
And
can
so I'm
just
thinking-
keep reminding them.
So maybe at this point, because they were made aware of the fact that the Board of Health did not wish to have a hard moratorium, maybe the board votes to send a letter to the zoning board about the concerns regarding, the possible zoning changes.
Yeah, but
And
just-
Well,
to
maybe we
clarify,
also have to send a letter to
that
the
should
select.
go to the
not our
planning board.
jurisdiction.
That should go to the planning board, not the zoning board of appeals.
Planning, you're right,
Planning
Paul.
board is the local board that's charged with overseeing the zoning bylaws.
Paul, shouldn't it go to the selectmen also?
Go to the select board as well, yes.
Yeah.
And question, again, we're going to go back to talking about COVID in a moment, but I'm really concerned about the staffing to be able to have these large numbers of cases, large numbers of vaccinations. And we don't even know how the next phase is going to roll out. And so should we just sort of, tag this, that when we actually, to make sure we get the report on the sewer options, and when we see that, to write a letter at that time?
I would say,
Hoping
yeah,
that things-
that would
quieting
be,
down?
yeah, I think that combination of things, I think if we have a report with some of the options, or at least something that's on the board, something that might have some possibilities to it, at the same time, that time frame would give us a better picture on COVID, then clearly that might be the better time for the board to take a harder
What I-
stand on. Go ahead,
What I
sorry.
would recommend is that we send a copy of this regulation that I think we're going to pass tonight
Mhm.
to the planning board and to the select board, and reiterate that, our preference is a full moratorium. But in the interim, this is what we've adopted, and we maintain that this is just a Band-Aid. I
Yes.
mean, this is not how we think the town should be proceeding.
We need a permanent solution.
Right.
Sue, is that going to be too much to ask of the department at this time?
For me, absolutely. I cannot put one more thing on my plate. I am
Okay.
stretched so thin right now. However, this regulation, once it's passed, becomes a regulation. And all it technically would need would be a cover letter from a board member to then forward to the select board and the planning board. Because part of the issue is when some of these subdevelopments come in and they want multiple units, they've already done a lot of their legwork. They've already done a lot of their homework and their testing and all that before I ever even see that development coming forward. They've done lots and lots of talking to the planning board before I know anything about it. So therefore, I think it really needs to, that if you want to relay that message and our concern as, the Board of Health, that it's not a problem. Once this is approved, this is draft form. We take it out of draft form, it gets passed, tonight, and we now have this regulation in place effective today.
So if I'm gonna write a letter, I want to say that the Board of Health prefers a hard moratorium, and that we do not see we think that 100% sewer hookups is the long-term goal to essentially that.
I think we have to be careful almost with that 100%, because
Mhm.
even on a good day before this moratorium was put in place, there was
Mhm.
never going to be 100%, because there's certain areas in town that we're never going to be able to connect to sewer.
Yeah, but that number is only in all seriousness, there's only a half a dozen pieces of property in this town. Now, I don't know what you can develop them into, but there's only a half a dozen pieces of property that were not included into that thing, and they just physically couldn't get there.
Right,
Like
so
Walter
maybe,
Street.
so maybe we don't use the word 100%, maybe we use the word maximum,
Maximize.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, basically, it's gonna be 99 point something, but
Eric, maybe what you say is that we've put this in as an interim solution, not as a full solution, and we are firm on our desire for a full moratorium. That this does not mean that we are backing away from the vote we took in the fall.
okay, yes,
Okay,
yes.
so the Board of Health, current regulation is the interim regulation that we are still firmly in support of a hard moratorium. We are concerned about the increase, building the increased capacity that's been generated recently, and recommend that we return to maximum sewer hookups as soon as possible.
Eric, I'd like you also to ask that if they would please consider our position as they review these big developments that are going to be coming in.
Okay, I'll tag that with the concern about the increased building.
That's what started this conversation, was the concern over the constant zoning changes to
Right.
accommodate bigger
But I
development.
think what we have to do is say, please, we're asking you to respect our position as you evaluate these developments and these zoning changes. I mean, that's all we can do. We have no control over them. If we had control, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. I mean, we didn't even know this was going on, and nobody seemed to be paying attention until it got to this terrible situation. I personally think we should adopt this regulation. I'm not sure it's perfect. I'm not sure that we're going to know whether it's perfect until we implement it.
Right.
But what I
Okay.
do want to say is I'm very thankful that Richard is on the board when this came before us, bringing his knowledge, and I'm glad that we have Michelle. We would be struggling trying to put this in place without the expertise of those two people. So Richard, I really do appreciate you taking the time. I know Michelle's not here, but I appreciate all Michelle's knowledge too. And I think we adopt these and we can always come back and change them.
Okay, is
They
that a
don't
motion to accept the regulations as written?
It's a motion.
I'll second it.
Do
Second.
we have
All in
to,
favor?
do we have to allow public input before?
Okay.
submitting
Oh, okay.
for Hearing?
And we allow that now? And
I
I see a
believe so.
hand.
You have
Can
to
we,
un-
unmute? Oh,
Donna,
press
can you
unmute.
unmute him?
Who's trying to speak?
It says Norma, but there's a gentleman on.
All right, well, Norma?
We can't hear you.
Is it-
Hold on. Can you unmute yourself? Bottom left of your screen?
Mine's the top right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There we
Like
go.
both.
Oh, there he is.
There you
Hello,
are.
Norma.
There's Norman LeBrecq.
Has any
Long
of
time.
this,
Long time no see, Norman.
yeah, thank you.
Long time.
When I saw this, I went trying to look where this document you've been working on
Mhm.
been published, and it was not included with the notice of this meeting. And is it appropriate to ship this out when you haven't really given the citizens of Chelmsford a chance to comment on this document?
No,
So
there's a link on there.
there is a link on there that if you wanted a copy of the draft, a copy of the draft was available at the health department, and then all you had to do was call the health department. This is actually the second meeting that we're having discussing this update to this regulation. And it was published in the paper as well as a public hearing, stating that you could contact the health department for a draft copy in advance.
What was published on the site was the agenda for today's meeting. There was no way from this publication that was put out on the site by, I believe, by the town clerk or whoever.
No, so
to,
the agenda was published, but there was a publication in a newspaper 2 different times, starting 2.5 weeks ago, about this meeting, saying that we were going to discuss this, along with the notice in that publication that said if you wanted a draft, you could call the health department and get a copy. And that was also published at our last meeting.
I give any of the drafts or documents that are going to be subject to approval by other departments are published with the notice that's on the internet. As far as I wasn't looking to go directly to you, I've been looking for it. I am not sure that the people have gotten that information, that they had to go to call your department to get a copy.
Legally, basically legally, we have to publish it in a newspaper.
Yes.
And we have to publish in the newspaper where the regulation is available. We have to publish basically what we're talking about, the date, the time, the location, the link. That has to be published 2 different times at a minimum of 14 days in advance of this meeting. So the first publication was 2 weeks. So we followed the requirements of the state as far as
I
out there.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I guess I was just looking at the wrong spot, because whenever I wanted to see, like on tonight, we've got the board of selectmen is also having a meeting.
Do you have specific concerns that you'd like, questions you want to ask about this?
I'm not sure what the document contains, so I was just wondering. And
Well, Norman, basically back in 1984, okay, before the sewer project even started, there was some dramatic concerns about protecting the groundwater in town, okay? And the Board of Health back then, and then modified it in, I think it was in 96, I forget what the second date was, 94, 96.
7 and 95.
95, okay. And bottom line is that we were concerned then because we were the largest town in the state, okay, that had 0 sewer connections, okay? And we had huge problems, and we were a hair away from going to court over it, state ordered to go to court to sewer these critical areas, okay? So we had the concerns back then. What we're doing now is basically taking that concept and modifying it to the new regs that have changed over the years. And there's been quite a few changes in the state environmental protection things and whatever. And we just modified them a little bit to make some sense compared to what's going on today. I guess that'd be the best way that I could describe it.
Yeah, yes, I was quite aware of that. In fact, in 204, 205, that time frame, I got a few $100 credit from the state because of looking at that point, the decision had been made that we needed to 100%. Yeah, and apparently, I was just wondering to what extent are we trying to justify that there's something reasonable or what the standards would be if we went to anything else but 100%.
Well, again, as I said, I think we're not happy with it, okay? And I think the chair was talking about the letter to go to the planning board and others because it's sort of set a motion into that what we thought was going to happen now was being pushed the other way. And I think Anne Marie was pretty clear in the fact that this is, I guess, our best step forward, along with what council is talking about in regards to what regulations are reasonable, whatever, that this is the best scenario that we have for this, I don't know the appropriate term, interim changes, but we're going to continue to push to get back to where I think everybody thought it was going to be back in the old days, which was that this was not going to be an issue for us in the future. And here it is again, kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. A concern to me also is that we, at the last, at our last town meeting, the town passed an article there, which completely revised what was there on, and sent over to Department of Public Works. They're basically there. Your board was put aside, and all you could do is make a recommendation to them. So that kind of upset me.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Well,
So basically what this does, Norman, is it's called the Subsurface Sewage and Wastewater Disposal Groundwater Protection. That's the title of the regulation. If you wanted to, give us an email, we could certainly send you a copy of it so that you can have it. But it goes through, essentially, it reinforces what is already a regulation under the state Title V regulation, which the state Title V regulation is pretty encompassing when it comes and septic and sewer. And the biggest section isn't really much written in about a variance. This one, there is a variance that people can apply for, but they have to meet certain provisions in order for the board to most likely authorize them to get a variance. And then the provisions, which we were talking about earlier, basically call for in the certain aquifer and zone 2 protection areas, a secondary system. So it's kind of a double protection to protect our groundwater. And that's kind of the best way to describe it right now, as far as what the board has for our capacity to put in place to protect our groundwater.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. I'm really pleased with what you're doing with the limitations. Thank you.
Thank
thank
you.
you, Norman.
Thank you.
you.
Okay, are there any other questions, concerns, or comments with regard to our subsurface sewage and wastewater disposal at the open meeting? And I think that we have a Sandy who has joined, but I don't know if there's a concern that they have.
And if you want to discuss the sewer portion of this hearing, could you unmute? I think we're good.
And if I'm
Okay.
not seeing further concerns, then I'm going to close the open comment section and go back to the board. And then at this time, I think it's appropriate to entertain a motion to accept if one of you wants to give it.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. And then the second part of this is that in terms of putting a brief cover letter together, I'm going to read what I just wrote down in the hopes of getting approval from the 3 board members while we're able to talk to each other, that I can put all 3 of our names on it. The Board of Health has revised our regulations regarding the subsurface sewage and wastewater disposal. We consider these to be interim changes and are firm in our recommendation or desire for a hard moratorium. Do I have to put like on?
What?
So, okay, so we are firm in our recommendation for a hard moratorium. We have concerns that increased building has outstripped our capacity and would like our concerns to be considered when contemplating future development. And then something about returning to maximum sewer, but I hadn't gotten to that sentence yet. Are
Mr.
people good
Chairman,
with that, or I am not the
would
lawyer?
recommend against including
What's
the
that?
language about the hard moratorium.
What's
Because I
that?
think that, I would recommend against the language regarding the hard moratorium. Because I think that can be confused with the sewer moratorium.
But that's what we voted. That's the language you used
The language you used for what?
back in the fall. When this came up, we had to make a recommendation to the select board, and my recollection is we said hard moratorium. Because they came back with the soft one.
No, so I guess we need to differentiate. They came back with a moratorium on sewer connections.
They came back with a soft moratorium. We wanted no development.
And that's under no circumstances an option.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
So the question is not whether we're doing a moratorium. It's that you want a return to 100% sewer connections rather than use of on-site septic systems.
And
What-
correct me, Paul, also, we also, so the board is also saying that they want the planning board to also take into consideration changes in zoning
Mhm.
based on this regulation. And what
Right, that,
people will have
that's a
to,
separate question.
oh, okay.
I'm just saying that when you're using the language of moratorium, you're risking confusion as to whether you're actually supporting the sewer connection moratorium or whether you're saying you don't want the use of on-site septic systems. So I just want to make sure that you're being clear that what your goal is to step away from the reintroduction of the use of on-site septic systems, go back to 100% sewer connection.
well, I mean, the interesting thing is that the Board of Health has been going out of the subsurface business for over 10 years. And also too, one of the negatives that has occurred because of that is the fact that we had, thousands, literally, close to 10,000 documents that were related to what was put in the ground at individual sites. All that material, because since we're going 100% to keep all that material for years and years and years and years, became a moot point. Why are we keeping old septic systems, locations and data and whatever, okay, to keep that around, okay, when everybody's going to be on a sewer connection? So, I mean, the board made a decision that supporting what was going on in sewer, that we were going to go to this 100%, and now that we have to go back to not square one, but go back to what we're doing here. So, I mean, again, and there's verbiage issues that you got to work out. But I mean, clearly, if someone says, well, can I go back? And again, not me personally, but can go back and dig up all this data that we have on the town, this, that, and whatever. And most of it doesn't exist anymore because we're keeping it years and years. I mean, when they made their first sewer connections in the late 80s, we weren't going to hold on to those septic things. We held on to everything probably for an average of 3-4 years. And then finally said, we're not keeping those files anymore. That's all been, thrown away, kind of thing, destroyed, whatever the term is. Now we're looking at the fact that we're going backwards and we don't have any of that data. So yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, we need something to plug a hole right now, but I think the fact is maybe there are two questions. One is we want to go back to 100%. And again, we understand that 100% may not be an exact number. All properties that can practically could be connected, to the central sewer system. So, I mean, I don't know, but clearly, I think the message has to get to the planning board and / the selectmen and other parties that continue to believe that they can make development decisions and not say that they have an obligation to make sure that they have the infrastructure in the ground to support it, and not just say, oh, we'll just dump back off to the Board of Health again. And they have to accept, just it'll go into the ground now after 25, 30 years of going in the other direction. So it is frustrating. It is very frustrating.
So having revised it with what's been said, the Board of Health has revised our regulations regarding subsurface sewage and wastewater disposal. We consider these to be interim changes and are firm in our recommendation for no new septic systems. We have concerns that increased building has outstripped our capacity, and would like the planning board to consider these concerns with any new future development. We encourage the town to make sewage capacity available as soon as possible.
Eric, the only thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see you start it with in response to the, the lack of sewer capacity.
Okay,
Something
So-
along that line.
so move sentence 3.
Well, I think it would be your first sentence would be in response to, we've adopted these regulations.
I'm thinking that okay, in response to what? You want it to be the increased building and the,
No, I think it's the lack of sewer capacity,
okay,
in response to the recent revelation of of insufficient sewer capacity.
And did you
We
want something?
wouldn't have done this.
Did
on
you
what,
also
Sue?
want- Did you want something in there where it references, make some type of a reference to requests for zoning changes to accommodate these increased developments? And to consider the concerns? I mean, we don't have any clout. The planning board makes the decision, but zoning changes, Paul, doesn't that have to be voted on at a town meeting? If there's a
Yes.
zoning change?
Yeah, I think we should add that in there. I just think we're ignored and, it gets dumped on us. This has been 16 years. This is how this dance has gone.
so
Somebody.
how do
in
you want
town
to put this in
stupid.
for zoning? You want to recommend that the town actually makes zoning changes?
No, that they consider they consider the lack of sewer capacity and the limited sewer capacity when they're considering a zoning change that would allow increased development.
So in here, I said that, and would like the
Well,
planning
the
board to
wheels are
consider our concerns with any future development. So you want it to be more explicit than that.
No, I think it's an end. It's AND, and in the case of zoning revisions.
Or proposed revisions, because it does have to be passed at
Mhm.
town meeting.
Right.
So in case of proposed zoning changes. What?
Just that it be considered, that the sewer capacity be considered.
Okay, so that the planning board, we would like the planning board to consider our concerns with any future development and propose sewer changes,
Zoning changes.
correct? Yeah, propose zoning changes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We encourage the town to make sewage capacity available as soon as possible. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds
Okay,
good.
so I will do minimal wordsmithing, but that will essentially be it. Sorry that it's written fast. And then is it okay if I include the full board on that
Sure.
letter?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, and Sue, is the best way for me to put it on my letterhead or send you an email copy of it tomorrow and send it, maybe Miss Donna to put on the town letter? Or what?
We could send you the Board of Health letterhead. We could just send you that in a Word doc.
Okay. Okay, so if I have problems, Miss Donna, I will possibly give you a phone call.
No
Okay.
problem.
Not this
So we're
week.
good with that. Do we need to take a vote on that or no?
I think you should.
Okay, do I have a motion that we accept this pretty much as written?
So moved.
And if so, and a second?
A second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. So now we've completed the hearing and we'll consider that closed at this time. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You need me for
Um,
anything, Mr. Chairman?
I think, Mr. Paul, I think thank you very, very much for all your assistance. And I think you're all set. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure.
Okay, so returning to the old business. So Sue, you sound like you now have people still coming up to deal with the volume for tracking. Who do you have that's doing the registering those that are getting the vaccines?
So it's being done electronically, and that is being tracked through Donna. Donna has learned the new system. It's put a lot on Donna's plate to try to coordinate all this in addition to all of her other job responsibilities. But the ultimate goal in our office is to get these vaccines out to our police and fire. So, you know, we're just putting in whatever time we need to get it done. It obviously puts a whole lot of extra impact on us here in Chelmsford because we're the lead community. I fall as the incident commander for the vaccination clinics, but you know, the ultimate goal here is just to get our police and fire vaccinated as soon as we can.
Do we have the need, do we have the ability to ask the surrounding communities that are participating if they would send some of their staff over to help out?
They already have, so every
Okay.
community has staff participating.
Okay.
That was the deal in the collaboration, was that every community would send staff. So I have nurses from every community. They're, as far as their public health nurses, I have their school nurses. I have pretty much every public health director is participating. So everybody's doing their part. It's just that the whole initial planning, you really can't split that up amongst a lot of people for the logistics of it and to make sure it's organized. The Prep Mod, which is the software system that the state has required us to use for everybody to register, is not a difficult thing to have people register on. It's just right now we're just trying to track because we have to verify ID for this particular clinic per the state for first responders. It's just a matter of extra planning to get those employee lists from the different communities and verify, you know, who works for what community if they are in fact on the list. But Donna has that down to a science now, and then it's a matter of training people for the data entry for the nurses when they actually do the vaccine, because that also is going to be all done on this system. But the beauty of this system is once it's done, once you are at that vaccination clinic, it's entered into this Prep Mod system, it automatically gets transferred to the Massachusetts Immunization Information System, which is really nice, and that avoids an additional step for us in the office.
So basically it's all one system. They basically self-register. The Donna's responsibility is largely checking to make sure the ID, checking to make sure that they're eligible. And then from there, it goes on to the nurses to give the shot and record it in the same system. And so you have enough support from other communities sending people in that it's not stressing your resources beyond the obvious.
Well, my office staff will be present at this clinic every day this week. So we will not be doing other office things Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Today, we predominantly spent the whole day finalizing everything with this clinic. We have a volunteer coming in to answer our phones in the office from 10 to 2 for the next 3 days.
So you're not tracking this week?
We are sending cases to the contact tracing collaborative at the state.
Okay. And do we have any idea what the state's going to do next week with regard to the next phase? Who's
No.
going to be giving the shots?
So
Okay.
we're not scheduled to give anything next week. We will have to set up clinic for these people 28 days later, which we've already got those scheduled. But our goal is once we have these clinics this week, to reach back out to the state, say, okay, we used X number of doses. This is what we would like to do. We'd like to do this next group of people in phase 1. You know, do we have your permission? And they'll basically let us know. And then as we get approval, once we get that approval, then they'll send us the vaccine.
Okay. And I just have a little bit of concern that I was thinking that, like, you know, as nurses go, my nurse is the most adept at, you know, giving vaccines. It's what they do all day long. And that this is not approved for kids under 16 years old for Pfizer and 18 years old for Moderna. And so we're talking about, we're like bringing waves of people in, but the next couple of waves get larger and larger and larger. So we're getting some experience, but we have no forethought, no forewarning as to what you're going to be asked to do next week and the week after as they increase the number of phases. If they're talking to CVS, if they're talking to Walgreens, that, you know, that's good. But I'm a little bit concerned that it's not all, life next week isn't going to go back to the same as last week.
I agree.
So,
And they've basically said that if you agree to continue on with vaccination clinics, that you have to agree to do that through phase 3. And the only control that we're going to have over these clinics is that every single person is going to have to be pre-registered. There's only so many slots in a day. It's not going to be walk-in.
yeah. So,
And we are going to rely heavily, very heavily on the Medical Reserve Corps volunteers. We have no choice. They're helping us out quite a bit this week as well already.
okay. I think that as far as updates go, otherwise, the hospital's capacity had been a maximum about 75. It dropped down to the 50s for number of patients in a day. It's still a little bit different than the mix we had in the spring. We have fewer ICU, fewer intubated patients. They have canceled, the governor canceled elective procedures, and they have opened up the second overflow site for COVID positive patients staffed by non-LGH individuals over at UMass Lowell. I have not heard what the capacity of that is doing. And otherwise, it's mostly the COVID facing hospital and outpatient physicians and offices. And that's all, you know, nurses and secretaries and everything else that have gotten shots. The residential centers and now the first responders that have gotten theirs. So anything else?
The only other thing that I would like to stress, and I stress it every single month, you know, on this meeting is, you know, we need to still encourage people to always wear their masks. We need to encourage people to sanitize. We need to encourage people to social distance, you know, not have large gatherings. All of those limitations have been decreased by, you know, the governor. But the other thing that I really would like to put out there, we're seeing more and more of this every single day as we do case contact tracing and case follow-up. And if you have someone in your household that is symptomatic and is being tested for COVID, everybody else in that household needs to stay home in quarantine until the results of that individual's test comes back. Because what's happening is people are symptomatic, they go get a test on Monday, everybody else in the household, whether it be a spouse or children or whatever, they're being sent to school, other people are going to work. 2 days later, the result of that individual's test has come back and it's positive. Now everybody in that house is a close contact and is supposed to be in isolation. Very rarely, we've only had less than one hand have we had household contacts where it doesn't go through the entire house, that everybody tests positive. So, you know, Ideally, we go by the state guidelines that, you know, you're not necessarily in quarantine unless someone has a confirmed diagnosis. But if you're a household contact of someone who's symptomatic and awaiting test results, it is in the best interest of everybody that you're going to come in contact with for you to stay home until you get that results back. Because
I'm bu-
as soon as that person gets the results back, inevitably within that 4 to 5 days, the other household members are symptomatic. And now they've been in school or they've been in the work community or whatever, and now they've potentially spread it to other people.
I'm bumping into a large number of families that they're exposed one day, then the next day they want to get a test negative because they have to get that to go back to school, not understanding that you're on quarantine at this point until you clear 5, 7, 10, 14 days.
Right.
I am bumping into a lot of households that, think that they're isolating when they are all getting together with masks off to eat meals together every day. And the ones on quarantine don't understand that day one of their quarantine is the day that they are completely isolated when that person comes off. And I think that the other problem that we're going to face is that as people get the vaccines, getting a vaccine doesn't mean you're immune today. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're immune 10, 14 days later, or even after your second dose. There's some people who aren't. So people still need to wear their masks, and you really aren't going to see the benefits of this until you get about 50 to 70% of the population be immunized. So that, people should not be going crazy just because they got a shot.
Right.
Well, I think we have a real problem in Chelmsford with the masks, with people. I mean, maybe it's because where I live, with people walking and running around. When they're walking and they're running, they just don't wear masks. I don't understand it. Whenever I run, I have a mask with me, and, I put it on if I see that there's people around, but they don't even have them with them. They run right by you, walk right by you. And I mean, they just don't seem to get that. Yes, you're exercising, but you still have to use precautions. You have to mask. I just don't think they're getting it, or they're ignoring it. Could be that. But we had to shut down the law office for 3 or 4 days because one of my staffs was potentially exposed. I understand people's concerns. It's a loss of revenue, but we had to wait till everybody tested negative.
Well, that's when the mask makes even more sense, because you're going to catch it from someplace. Most people, 60% don't have any idea where it's coming from right now. So
Right.
that you can't just say that, like, well, I don't know anybody. So yeah, when you're running, have a mask,
Yeah.
protect. And it's not even for you as much as it is to protect everybody around you. They need to protect you. You need to protect them. It's a social contract.
Right.
And by all
So,
reality, the governor's order says that when you're in any public space, you're supposed to be wearing a mask. And
I can't tell you how many people down here, South Chelmsford, do not wear that mask. I don't know what the situation is. I see them walking in the morning. It's maybe 7 o'clock in the morning, and they must think nobody else is out. Well, I'm seeing you, so I'm out,
Right.
So the other thing I want to talk about, and this has been on my mind for a while, Andiamo's, which is like my favorite pizza place, for gluten-free. I don't know about the way their tables are set up. And I did question it to the manager, and he said that it was approved by the plant, by our staff. But their tables have dividers between them, and they're seating people on either side of the dividers, and the dividers don't even go head high.
Oh, the dividers should go head high.
They do not go head high unless there were a lot of tall people in that place.
Okay.
It's just a concern that I had. I don't want to overstep my bounds.
No?
I
don't remember who's been in there, Michelle or Mark.
Yeah, I think they're probably shoulder level. I think people on either side are above that divider.
Okay, we'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, take a look at it. They could easily stagger it, but it just seems like they are 6 inches apart from each other because of that divider, and that divider does not go very high up.
And I'm going to put myself out on a limb and say that if it was approved, then they were supposed to be staggering it. And
Could
then
be.
the question is, you know,
Yeah,
are
could be.
they actually staggering it? And then, of course, right now, it's the decreased capacity to the 25%. So they should
Mhm.
be adhering to that as well.
Okay, so that, I just had that on my mind for a while here.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Any other items with regard to COVID?
No,
No.
no.
And if not, I was going to suggest that we move on to the pending approval types of permits and permit fees.
Mhm.
And am I right that everything on the first 2 pages, oh wait, the first page is pending approval?
Yes, so the Mill River contract that was sent in, and it has been approved. The fee schedules for the ones that were over 1,001 gallons per day were not originally on the first paperwork that was sent in. So it was not on the permit fee schedule that you approved at the previous meeting.
Mhm.
So we needed to, in order to have this fee schedule approved, we needed to put it on tonight's agenda.
And what's the basis for these numbers if these are new to us?
Therefore,
So
Mill,
larger system.
but
They're what?
They're larger systems.
No,
So
but like, how do we come up with the numbers? Is this like, is the 2150, is that like twice what the less than 1,000 or?
no, this is their standard fee. This is Mill River Consulting's fees that
Okay.
they're charging us.
Does somebody who knows this better than I have a comment on these numbers? Are these reasonable?
I think they are reasonable. The issue is a lot of these systems that are going to be of that size, a good percentage of them, depending on where they are and with the regs and whatever, are going to require some kind of additional treatment, and therefore the design and review process is a lot more complicated than it is for a standard septic system that used to be in someone's yard.
Mhm.
So I think these. Go ahead.
I will say too that Michelle, you know, with her, recent experience with septic and all that, did look at them, and she said this is, you know, pretty standard fees that consulting companies charge when they have to do the inspections on these different types of systems. So this was just a page of what they had neglected to put
Okay.
in. We didn't put it in our last month. So we just need to add it to our fee schedule. And then anything that is basically over 10,000 gallons falls under
State.
D.
Now, with this, the next page, it's the third page in this, the numbers don't line up with what's on the previous 2 pages. So what is this?
we add the, as we did the last time, we added the admin fee.
Mhm.
So the residential ones, which is on the back page of that fee schedule, the admin fee added, I believe, was 25. And so the one that's 1,001 to 5,000 gallons per day was a $50 admin fee. And the 5,000 to 10,000 was a $100 admin fee added.
Okay.
Okay, so these all square up, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So- Any other discussion?
No.
No,
We hear a motion to approve,
So moved.
seconded,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
And
I
just so
think we
that
voted
all-
on everything.
just so
old
all of
business.
you know, I did speak with, you know, as far as these fees, as you can see, for these bigger systems and all that, they are pretty hefty fees. And when we have someone who wants to put in, you know, a system, we don't have the capacity or the money in our budget to account for paying these consulting fees. So I did speak with Paul Haverty about that and the best way to go about doing this. And because we really don't know how many systems are going to come before us, it's not a hard, fast number. I actually requested that there be a revolving account set up just for septic and wastewater, and that is going to be put on the agenda for town meeting in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we voted on everything in old business, so I don't think we have to vote on that. The next is animal bites, but I don't have a report in here.
Yeah, we actually had a resident that wanted to have us be able to speak about what the process is if a resident does get bit by an animal. So we've asked Mark, our animal control officer, to be on the call with us today and kind of walk us through what those steps are.
Okay, so when a human is bit by a wild animal, generally you have Trinity Fire Police respond to treat the wound. After that, usually they're transported depending on the severity of the bite. One of the women in town complained because the call didn't come in originally. It wasn't logged as an animal bite. It was logged as an open line. Trinity was dispatched along with fire and police because it was an open line. Later on discovered she was bit by a flying squirrel in her home. She refused transport, drove herself to the emergency room, I believe at LGH Saints campus, brought the wild animal into the hospital, which she was then turned away. Brought the animal back outside, left it with her vehicle, went back in. Now, my understanding is technically she was not seen by a doctor, but in the lobby or waiting room, she had spoken to a few nurses about what to do. Therefore, because it wasn't technically a visit to the ER, there was no bite report generated. Normally what would happen is, again, the severity of the bite determines whether you're transported by ambulance or not. You go to the hospital, you see a doctor, a nurse, physician's assistant. They generate what's called a bite report: the date, the time, the animal, the location of the bite, severity. Sometimes, what was the treatment? Was it just a simple clean the wound, put a Band-Aid on, and send her home with antibiotics? Did it require stitches? Was it a laceration? So on and so forth. All that information would generate a bite report, then is faxed over to animal control, and I believe the Board of Health would receive a bite report.
Mhm.
So there were several layers that, because she refused transport, because she technically didn't see anyone in the ER, there was no bite report. Her concern was that nobody from Trinity or Fire told her that she should contact animal control in regards to the bite. Now, she later, I guess, discovered that online by, going on to the Mass website, left a voicemail on my mailbox because I believe it was around 10 o'clock at night. I contacted her around 8:30 the next morning and we talked about it at length. We talked about, where things might have gone wrong that didn't generate a bite report, or why she may not have understood she needed to contact animal control. My belief is that, it's a high stress situation for somebody sometimes when they're bitten by a wild animal. There's a lot going on with Trinity and Fire there. Someone may have said, you need to contact animal control. I'm sure they told her you need to contact your primary care physician as soon as you can. So we talked at length. I encouraged her to talk to her doctor, and between the two of them, because I'm not a medical professional, they need to decide whether or not a flying squirrel bite deems a rabies shot. Some of her concerns revolved around, what are the costs? Do they hurt? I don't have the money to cover a rabies shot. Things of that nature. So she was a little shy to the fact that, it may cost her something to get these shots for the wild animal bite. And I couldn't stress enough the fact that rabies was not something you play with. If your doctor deems it necessary, you do it. But that's between her and her doctor. Now, flying squirrels, to my knowledge, are not carriers of rabies. However, they do share habitat with bats, who are huge carriers. So there is a possibility of cross-contamination, not that I've ever seen it happen, and that was something we talked about. I believe her doctor said she didn't need the rabies shot eventually, but her concern again was that, to her knowledge, she was not informed by Trinity or our fire department that she would have to contact animal control. So I guess she wants us to rectify that by speaking to both departments. I guess that's the concern ultimately. Now, I'm not generally called out for something, and don't take this the wrong way, as minor as a flying squirrel bite. Had it been, a coyote attack, a raccoon attack, depending on the severity of the injuries, they would call me in if I'm off shift. But again, she refused transport. She was able to drive herself. So that being talked about amongst Trinity and Fire, I believe it was determined that I wasn't necessary at the scene. I do follow up when I'm left messages. The very next day I happen to be off, I still followed up with this woman.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. I
So-
think that's important for people to know kind of the chain of events and what does happen with an animal bite in the community, because I don't think it's something that people really know about. So I appreciate
Absolutely.
you taking the time.
I believe people are more aware that bats and raccoons are high carriers of rabies.
Mhm.
So they understand the severity of the bite. But again, even a flying squirrel, I had to look into and research because I had never heard of,
I didn't
rabies
think we had them.
that way. I'm sorry?
I didn't think we had them around here.
Yeah, apparently we do.
Yeah. Did they get the flying? Are we sure it was a flying squirrel?
She said she had captured it. She had it in a box when she went to the hospital. When they told her to take it outside, I believe she placed it on her car, not in it. And was
Yeah.
able to
Oh,
chew a hole
It
through the box.
escaped?
Yes.
Oh,
So I
wonder.
mean, it's a comedy of errors. That, normally I would have taken a squirrel, had it remained captured, we would have euthanized it, sent it out to the lab to be tested regardless.
Right.
Yeah,
And depending on the results of the test, we would go from there about the rabies shots.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as
Well,
my
I mean-
understanding is rabies shots now is a shot in the shoulder like the flu shot. And it's a series of shots followed up within a 14-day span.
That sounds a lot better than it used to be.
Right.
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
The old system.
So, and I think that the initial ones, I think the state has them all over at the emergency rooms. And the
Mm.
follow-up, the same emergency department, their staff, they man the urgent care centers for Circle Health, and they can do the follow-up shots of those. But, as a Department of Health, there was times that I had rabies in the office. I think that the Department of Health had rabies vaccines in the Department of Health. That is no more. The
No more.
access, the way
Right.
to get that is to go through the emergency room and then follow up their protocol to follow up for subsequent.
Right.
So,
Correct. And, you have time to, on a rabies bite. I mean, it doesn't instantly enter your system. You have a couple days. So there is time to contact your primary care or to go to the ER or to, Circle Health or one of those emergency urgent cares.
right. But anybody who wants to play the lottery on this one, if you get it, you're not going
No.
to do well.
No, I strongly recommended and advised her that rabies is not something to play with because it is neurological and it is deadly.
Right. And then the other one would be tetanus, to make sure that she followed up with a PCP and found out when her last tetanus booster was. So,
To my understanding, she had followed up and they decided against the rabies shots. So,
okay.
okay.
Yikes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
So, any other discussion?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I think what he was talking about was, connection between departments and whether it's between us and fire and Trinity or whatever, or vice versa, or in the other direction. I remember, that one scenario that's still in play today. In fact, we had the thing in our folder. Anytime there's an active asbestos activity going on, we make sure, even though there's nothing in the book saying that we contact police and fire, so that they don't inadvertently go into that scene of exposure to asbestos. And the reason they don't is that because we make a step, even though we don't have to, of contacting those two departments and saying, hey, by the way, at this such and such address and such date, here's a copy of what they're going to be doing. So don't be surprised if you roll up in this scene and say, wait a minute, why are people running around masks? Or they just walk into a scene and they get exposed to the asbestos. So the idea of, one entity, whether it's animal control, ourselves or whatever, having that discussion with the fire department or Trinity and whatever to sit there and say, and I'm not saying the specifics of this scenario, that, hey, if there's an animal bite involved, kind of put it in the right direction kind of thing. So for protocol. So, yeah.
So my belief is that I don't think Trinity or fire missed it. I'm a commotion.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not
And
saying they did. I'm
with the
just saying.
situation.
Yeah.
She may have missed somebody in her, because there's a lot going on. Oh, EMTs there, there's blood pressure being taken, there's Trinity fire outside. I mean, for anyone who's used to dealing with a stressful situation, you get very focused on first your blood pressure or what we're talking to you about getting a medical history. So I don't believe that they did not tell her. I think maybe she might have missed it.
Okay.
I've worked with Trinity and fire several times on several
Yeah.
bites, and it's
Yeah.
never been a concern. But again, a flying squirrel was new to me too.
I don't think I'd know one if it did bite me. I probably wouldn't catch it either, so.
Right, yes. The bats are different. Bats, we whole different protocol because you wouldn't know if a bat bit you. So we follow a different protocol for something like that.
Good thing she had it.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm surprised we have flying squirrels. I worry that it was a misdiagnosis and that it was actually a bat that she thought was very cute or something. So, okay. So with that, any vote that we need to take on this?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So moving on to other.
Mhm.
By the way, Sue, I'm reading your report. I just want to say, like, for all of you guys are worth your weight in gold. Okay. I cannot believe everything that I don't know how you can possibly juggle this, because this is exponential, the way it's gone from, like, you have your normal routine and you go to the tracking, the immunizations for the entire, coordinating that for the entire area and everything else. So I'm surprised that you even took the time to write these up for us these weeks. But thank you so much. And thank your staff, and thank Donna. Thank you, because it's crazy all over that place.
Thank you. I was actually joking.
Yeah.
I did my monthly report last night at like 9 o'clock. And I said it's not as good as what it usually is, but it's done.
No, I see the depth in each of these
Mark's
things.
is so much better.
I remember we used to put the phone calls in this,
That's right.
and we used to have pages and pages, and I don't want to know what it looks like these days, Donna.
We can't even keep track.
Yeah.
Whatever happened with Popeyes?
Sounds like they were closed for the day. I don't know what the issue was from Mark's thing.
They ended up having, I believe it was, and they all run into each other because we've had so many different ones. They had a couple of people test positive, and they had to shut down and do the cleaning and the proper sanitizing and all that before they could reopen.
Mhm.
Okay, and I'm not seeing a lot of repeat offenders on the coronavirus complaints.
Even
No.
that, I'm going to tell you up front, even with that, we haven't really been tracking every single one of them because we just don't have the capacity.
Okay, so mind you, I won't ask because I know per our discussion last meeting that you said that if you have repeat offenders that you're making sure that you go out there and double check them and such.
Oh, yeah. And if we have issues with like food establishments and stuff like that, we are still going out. It's what I can't do is,
Push the pencils around the desk.
yeah. And I can't, oh, I was on the bike path and, people weren't wearing their mask when I was there 3 days.
Mhm.
Those,
Well, they're not, so don't bother going out.
right. And all of the numerous phone calls and in all honesty, a lot of those phone calls, I think we're still getting them, we're still getting the emails, but a good majority of them have now switched to, when can I get my vaccine?
Right.
When are you
Right.
going to be doing clinics? When are you going to be doing this group? This is where, where I fit. Where can I fit into this equation?
Okay.
Motion to accept other,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We need to open up to public input, but I don't see anybody else on at this time besides Mark. Hi, Mark. So, open, and unless anybody appears very quickly, it's now closed.
Well,
Our next meeting will be, I guess, on February 1st. I assume that will be Zoom. It'll be virtual again.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't
And with,
anticipate things changing that drastically between now and then for us to be able to meet in person.
Yeah, I doubt it.
so, okay, and with that, the last item is do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear a
second.
second? All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.